Ethical decision making is a very important part of what we do on a daily basis, and it is a challenging thing. So I'm going to call upon Bill Watterson also. He uses his characters Calvin and Hobbes to debate a host of issues. Calvin is a walking embodiment of the human id, basically a good kid who can't control his impulses, and Hobbes is his stuffed tiger who embodies a superego. So here he is talking about how today at school I tried to decide whether to cheat on my test or not. I wondered, is it better to do the right thing and fail, or is it better to do the wrong thing and succeed? On the one hand, undeserved success gives no satisfaction, but on the other hand, well-deserved failure gives no satisfaction either. Of course, most everybody cheats sometime or another. People always bend the rules if they think they can get away with it. Then again, that doesn't justify my cheating. Then I thought, look, cheating on one little test isn't such a big deal. It doesn't hurt anyone. But then I wondered if I was just rationalizing my unwillingness to accept the consequence of not studying. Still, in the real world, people care about success, not principles. Then again, maybe that's why the world is in such a mess. What a dilemma. So what did you decide? Nothing. I ran out of time and I had to turn in a blank paper. And Hobbes says, well, any more simply acknowledging the issue is a moral victory. Well, it just seemed wrong to cheat on an ethics test. Okay, ethical decision making. There are a number of models of ethical decision making, but it's important to identify the problem. Why is it a dilemma? It's important to identify options and alternatives to consider, and what are the possible consequences of each choice. It's important to consult with professionals, preferably not your closest friends who are going to agree with whatever you think you ought to do. Sometimes that involves mental health lawyers. Consider and evaluate the rights, responsibilities, welfare of the client and patient and others involved, family members, friends, other clients, the community. Make a decision, implement it, and inform the affected parties, and document the process and the results, especially if it's sort of a tricky, complicated issue. Often people try to defend what they did to a licensing board or an ethics committee by saying, well, it was a therapeutic choice. Where is that in the notes? Okay, make sure that you document in these decision-making processes. Okay, let's go ahead to another scenario. Oh, but before I do that, let's talk a little bit about white male privilege. Let's see, did anybody else here attend one of the sessions on privilege and power? Yeah, a couple of you did. Okay, so there was a big discussion on privilege. But the definition, the technical definition, Peggy McIntosh, 1989, is the unearned advantages and benefits that accrue to white individuals by virtue of a system normed on the experiences, values, and perceptions of their group. And here's Bill Watterson again helping me out with the definition of privilege. Here's Calvin saying, I no longer wish to be called a boy. Well, isn't that what you are? Yes, but I find that term demeaning and sexist. Well, what do you want to be called then? A chromosomally advantaged youth. Well, that may not catch on. And then I like the sports metaphor for defining privilege. A person who is privileged is somebody who was born on third base and goes through life believing that they hit a triple. I can't make political comments on tape. As I was listening this morning, I was thinking, okay, white women have privilege of sorts. So maybe they were born on second base and go through life believing. And then men of color have privilege by virtue of gender. So maybe they were born on first base and go through life. Women of color are just trying to get a chance at bat. It's what we're trying to do. But anyway, privilege is a complicated construct. And it's important to be aware that is a dynamic in the psychotherapeutic process at times. When we're working with men, whether you're a man as a therapist or a woman, it's also important to be aware of earned privileges, such as your credential. Anybody here know the percentage of society that has a doctorate? Let's start with the masters. Anybody here know the percentage of people that have masters in this country? In all areas, not just psychology. Anybody have any guesses?
Less than
It's 5%. 5% of society has a master's degree. About 27% have a bachelor's degree. Guesses about what percentage has a doctorate? 0.85%, less than 1%. We hang out with each other, so we forget that not everybody is as educated, okay? So we have to remember that when people come to see us, they may be interacting with that variable at some level. So that's sort of an earned privilege. Okay, so let's look at another scenario. Okay, you have a Latino patient who is a quadriplegic. He lived in a South American country and holds dual citizenship in his parents' country and in the U.S., where he was actually born. He was living in the South American country with his wife and children. His wife was from that South American country when he had working a very successful job when he was injured in a car accident. He tried to continue his job but was not able to. His wife convinced him that they should move to the U.S. to be near his family and to have more help. After living here for 6 months, his wife decided to return home with the children for a visit. She decided not to return to the U.S. He entered therapy at the suggestion of his mother because he's trying to decide whether to file for divorce, return to the home country, or continue the status quo of just living in two different countries. He's very angry about the accident, but does not blame his wife for leaving because he's not the man he used to be. So why would she want to stay? He also reports that he's never cried about the changes in his life. He's developed independence and doesn't want to be a burden to anyone. He doesn't really know how coming to therapy will help, but he wanted to appease his mother. Okay, so what do you feel in listening to this case? What information do you need that would inform you about the direction in which to proceed in therapy? Just spontaneously, let's have a discussion about this case.
Pity.
Pardon?
Pity.
Pity? You feel pity?
That's my gut reaction.
Yeah. Hard. What's that?
Sympathy.
Sympathy, a lot of sympathy. Yes.
I feel a little overwhelmed. There's certainly a lot of challenges.
It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. How do you deal with someone who had so much going for him? Very handsome man. This is a modified version of a real case. Very handsome man. You can tell he was on top of the world until this happened. It's very, very difficult to see someone dealing with this. So those are your feelings. Those are concern, empathy, a little overwhelmed. Gary?
Yeah, it also makes the inventory of my feelings of sexual potency and relationship and not being sexually functional.
What happens to a man when he's no longer sexually functional? If that was a very important part of his identity with his relationship with his wife and in general. It stirs that up, yes.
It makes me kind of think about two different areas. One is that as a man, he's not allowing himself to feel emotions like grief he has over the loss.
Lots of grief.
Physical stuff, and then also the caretaker piece for I'm here to appease my mother, and I care to live a caretaker for my wife, and I understand.
Yes, everybody is going to come first because that's his role as a man, to take care of people. As a Latino man in particular, yes.
I find myself thinking this man also has some incredible strengths.
Absolutely.
Which really could help him in this situation.
Absolutely. I was amazed because he was a quadriplegic. He wasn't a full quadriplegic. I didn't know about this. He could move his hands and arms enough to drive his own van, which was amazing. I'd never known a quadriplegic to be able to do that. And he insisted on it. He worked really hard in his physical therapy and his rehab to be able to do that.
That piece about his having developed his own independence is like a lifeline for me.
Yeah. So focusing on his strengths and resilience would be a very important part of the treatment. Mhm. What else would be important?
What other aspects of a support system he has? Obviously his mother.
Yeah. His mother, and he had siblings, some of whom were in the same city.